I spent 2 decades as a Fortune 500 head of HR sitting in the rooms where promotions were decided. I'm Courtney O'Connell, and I'm bringing you inside the promotion room. This week, Richard Hinton joins me inside the promotion room, and we had a really deep and authentic conversation around Richard's diversity, making him truly feel other at work, the only at work. And he talked to me about the emotional burnout that he went through after years of wearing a mask to fit in. We talk about our inner critics and how to move on from them so that we can truly thrive at work and silence those nasty inner critic voices. He also shares what advice he would give to himself if he could pick up the phone and call the earlier professional version of himself. What's the advice that he would give? And I think you're going to want to hear it. We also talk about how our jobs can really become our identity and how do we redefine who we are outside of our job titles. Here's my conversation with Richard. Welcome to the promotion room, Richard.
Well, thank you. So happy to be here.
So glad to have you here. To kick us off, I would love to know, where did you grow up and what did you want to be when you were a little boy?
Oh, I love this question. So I grew up in a small town, a little north of Boston, called Tewksbury, Massachusetts. My dream job, I had one when I was younger, very young, and that was to be a police officer. My father was a police officer. I love the show Chips. That I think I'm dating myself, but I love that show. My dog was named Chips.
Half of our audience is going to have no idea what you're talking about, but it was a really cool show back in the 80s with 2 motorcycle cops and all kinds of shoot 'em up drama.
Exactly. So that was my first job when I was very young. But then I kind of got scared of being a police officer. And as I grew up, my dream job was to be a dancer in The Lion King. So that was, I danced 20 plus years of my life. And I love dancing. That is like my love language, to be honest with you. So being a dancer, The Lion King always spoke to me, so that was my dream job. And it's right down the street from me too here.
You're calling in from the Big Apple. So yes, your dream is right around the corner. I love asking this question of people because it's, for the vast majority of us, we're doing nothing even adjacent to what our childhood dream was. And I just always think it's a great reminder of what did that child like us love, because adulting takes over and we start to kind of move into logical brain and what needs to happen next. And so I hope that you can flex that muscle literally and figuratively.
There you go. It'll always be in my heart. So I know that it will never go far away.
Yeah. So what did you study in college?
I studied communication and culture, which is almost like a fancy way of looking at sociology. And I minored in Spanish.
So what was your bridge into the corporate world?
My bridge into the corporate world was college. I started taking some business classes and it just wasn't clicking for me. I didn't really enjoy it. I'm not a math person by any means. So I was very resistant towards that, but I had some friends that were doing this communication program. I loved how people talked, especially from a language perspective. Being someone that's diverse, I always wanted to understand why I experienced things differently than so many other people. What brought to my culture? My mother's from Jamaica. Her parents are both of Indian descent from India, and my father's African American. So to have that mix there, I always wanted to understand more about my identity as well as other people's identity and how they interact. So communication and that cultural component that went along with it, that really allowed folks to understand how we operate with one another, how we communicate with one another. That was something that was very powerful.
What was your first corporate job?
My first corporate job was I interned at Gillette. It was a 2.5-hour drive. The fact that I had Gillette on my resume was so important to me. So I would make that commute 2 to 3 times a week.
Wow.
And I worked within the HR department, and it was a fantastic opportunity because I started in learning and development, and then I was able to do some work with the HR representative. I was able to do some work with the person that was in charge of benefits and comp. So I really got an amazing taste of what HR is all about. And security was also part of HR within that organization at the time. So I even did security as well too. So that was such a learning and really solidified my passion for HR.
Yeah. Well, and kind of cool that you got to do security. So it was a little bit like police officer, right? So like,
yeah, there you go.
it might be
a uniform and everything. I was like, hey, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right, Courtney.
All right. So you had an amazing internship, graduate from college. How'd you land your first gig?
Oh, it was such a difficult market, I remember. And everybody had said, if you want to get started in HR and you're having trouble finding like a coordinator role, get into recruiting. Recruiting is going to be the way that you get into. So I applied for all these different roles, mostly in Boston. I had moved home. So I was living in Tewksbury at the time with my mom, but there were a number of different opportunities within Boston. And I was really excited just to actually commute into the city, eventually live in the city. That was like my dream. And coming from the suburbs, it just sounded so grandiose, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I applied for a number of different roles, ended up hearing back from a marketing and promotions company called Alloy, and they had a little staffing arm within their organization called TSA, and it was called the Staffing Authority. And so I remember the interview itself. I could not find the office. The last minute, I found the office and I went up and I remember interviewing with the manager at the time and then the head of HR at the time too. And I fell in love with recruiting. I fell in love with the organization. I fell in love with the work. But it was really high volume recruiting. So hairdressers, makeup artists, tour managers, and our clients were so cool. Coming out of school and having MTVU, which doesn't, I'm dating myself again, doesn't exist anymore, but having those as your clients and folks going to the different spring break kind of things and hiring people to do that kind of work, that was so cool. And it just made recruiting that much more fun for me and just such a great learning playing field that I learned recruiting and then I wanted to learn all the other different functions within HR that I had experience, but I wanted to learn a little bit more at Alloy. But Alloy was phenomenal to just give me that experience and just understand a little bit more of the corporate setting, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, and the cool thing here, especially with your communications degree and what you loved
Mm.
about communications and why do people communicate differently and how do you connect them? Being in recruiting,
Oh yeah.
I think it's underappreciated how good recruiters, like such astute communicators, because you've got to understand the hiring manager and who are the people that they're going to feel like is a good slate of candidates, right? And so it's like just those judgment and really understanding all of the nuances behind how someone comes and presents themselves is a huge part of being a good recruiter.
Absolutely. And it was high volume too. So it's like, it wasn't just like 5 or 6 roles here. We're talking like hundreds of roles here. So to learn in that setting, I don't think that realized how much that helped me, set me up for success of really being able to kind of hone in on those skills. Like you had mentioned, communication skills, the judgment, understanding what the hiring manager is looking for as opposed to what the candidate's looking for. To do that so quickly, I think it definitely gave me a benefit, a leg up there.
Yep. Yep. So tell us about your corporate arc.
LA was phenomenal. It's kind of funny because marketing promotion companies go through so many different changes based on clients and based on the restructuring that they do. Alloy was no different. And they wanted me actually to take on a more of a corporate recruiter role and move to New York. At the time, this is fun. So this is really ironic too. At the time, I really didn't want to leave my mom. I have a single mom that was home too. So I didn't feel like it was the right time to leave her, but also to move on from Alloy. And I had a friend that had been working with me at Alloy and she had left. And she also was somebody that I went to school with. We got our masters together. We started our HR career together, what have you. She was at a general contractor called Shama Design and Construction in Boston. And I remember she called me up and she's like, Richard, she's like, they have this role here. I think it'd be great for you. They're doing some diversity work. It's a coordinator role. I think you would love it. And I remember like talking to her and being like, Adrian, you want me to work in construction? Are you serious? As like Black Indian gay guy, you think I'm going to work and that's going to be a good setting for me. But when I interviewed there, I fell in love with the company. I fell in love with the HR group. I fell in love with the culture. Shaman was one of those places that didn't just talk the talk. They really walk the walk. I loved the vision and the mission that the CEO shared as well, but it just felt like home. And I remember interviewing and I was going through a really bad breakup at the time. There was so many things that were going on, but I ended up getting the role and I was at Shaman for 16 years. I loved it that much.
Wow. Okay. So this is really interesting. How many years of experience did you have at this point? How far out of college were you?
It was about 3 years out of college.
Okay. All right. So still pretty green
Oh,
and cutting your teeth in the corporate world. You get a call and a Black Indian gay man in the suburbs of Boston
mhm.
to go to work at a general contractor organization. And so I'm curious, is this a case of judging a book by its cover too soon? So you're thinking,
Absolutely.
construction industry, absolutely not. That's not going to be where I belong. And then 16 years. So tell us about like, what did you get wrong? And what were those signs that you got that you were like, okay, maybe this could be the right place for me to
Yeah.
run?
Yeah. I really leaned into my heart. My heart was telling me that this was a right. All the actions that folks had showcased and given and shared with me throughout the interview process, it felt right. And so I think one thing that I've learned in my life is really trusting my gut and being intentional with that. But I really enjoyed my manager. We just clicked. Things just clicked. I loved the recruiter there. I got to walk around the office. It's just this feeling that I really felt that felt like home, and everything that I experienced was really, really helpful and instrumental in my career. Shamit understood what it took to develop me, and they challenged me. I had such great managers, such great mentors. As I grew within the organization, it didn't stop there. I moved into a business partner role, from a coordinator role to a generalist role to a business partner role. And really, once I got to that business partner role, that is really where my heart just kind of opened up and said, all right, I know this is HR is my career and this is where I'm going. And this company is really, really helping me build those skills and is really committed to my development. So much to the point where I was supporting an executive vice president, and he was like, you're my business partner. I want you to move to New York. We're going to do some work with New York and we're going to grow this office. I had no idea how I was going to move to New York, but I knew I was moving in the moment. So it was one of those things, again, where I say the feeling, my gut was telling me like, this is right. And I really leaned into that. I trusted myself so much more intrinsically that I knew it was the right move for me. And I think I was fearful that I wouldn't be understood. I wouldn't be accepted. It wouldn't be a place where that I felt like I would belong. And I did so much work around diversity and inclusion while I was at Shamit, work that allowed me to really partner with the executives, partner with the CEO. The CEO he was one of those guys that would stop by anyone's office on a Friday or whenever he was making rounds, and sit
Mm-hmm.
there and talk with you. And that type of leadership, I find that so incredibly important, so incredibly moving and real, that I remember thinking, I want to be a leader like that. I want to I want to grow to be a leader like that, because that's so effective, and it makes people feel like they can do anything, they can grow into anything, they can develop in so many ways. And I think really I was wrong with making the assumption that just because it's a construction company and, it may be fairly homogenous,
Mm-hmm.
people are doing things differently, and you can do things differently, and you can be different and still find a sense of belonging
Yeah.
in an organization, a culture that really, really fosters and doesn't just talk the talk, they actually walk the walk. So
Yeah.
it was a beautiful, beautiful, and I spent 6 years in Boston and then 10 more years in New York. And New York, once I moved to New York, I was growing like nobody's business, helping to open up an office in LA, one in Chicago, one in Miami, really helping to scale and grow the New York office as well. And I am so grateful for the sponsors, the mentors, the incredible managers, the
Yeah.
leadership team that I was able to work with while I was at Shamit. And I'm still so connected to that organization. And I think that really speaks volume
Yeah.
to the culture, as
Yeah.
well as how much of an impact it had on my career and my life, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah. What a gift. And I love hearing you talk about the CEO, because there are some of those leaders who walk around and do the chat because they are told to and coached to do
Mhm.
that. And of course, if it's not authentic, we
Yeah.
feel it pretty immediately. So it sounds like your CEO was truly authentic. And you mentioned seeing that CEO in action, giving you inspiration for what kind of leader you want to be. And what a gift. I think we have the opportunity to work with those marquee leaders that really become goals, right? Hashtag leader goals. I'm curious, have you ever worked for the opposite? Have you ever worked for a manager where you were like, this is everything I don't want to be, and learning the other side of
I
things?
have. I have. I feel when I worked under that person, I think it was just they were really technically strong. Like
Mhm.
I think the world of them, because they were so technically strong, and they had risen through the ranks because of their performance there and that level.
Yeah.
Leadership is more than that. Leadership is so much more of like the EQ that also kind of aligns with that too. So I have worked with leaders that don't really have that same level of EQ, and also don't know how to ask for partnership or how to get coaching, how to receive coaching. But I also think that the nature of the business, the nature of the industry, what you're doing, I think those also play into how someone can develop to be an effective leader. And
Yeah.
so, if you're a startup or if you're really seasoned, or more enhanced, leaders are so different.
Mhm.
And one thing I've learned too is coaching is a gift. And I think a lot of times I find these leaders that are struggling and they don't lean into the coaching. They don't lean into the support from the people that they hired that are on their executive team too. So
Yeah.
being able to really understand that and understand that you don't have to have all the answers either. You've hired a talented staff, utilize that staff as
Yeah.
well too, because that goes so far.
Yep. Yep. So I think, gosh, there's so many different angles to take here. The rabbit hole I'm going to go down is when people are interviewing internally or externally. I think that all of us have a preference for the type of leadership we like to work under. And it's not a one size fits all kind of environment. I think we can all agree inspirational, good communication, positive attitude, someone who cares about coaching. And then there are all the nuances around personality and company culture. And so I'm curious, how would you advise somebody who maybe is in a position now where they are making a decision about whatever it is? How would you advise them? What are you looking for in the interview panel? And when you're talking to your potential new manager, what are the things that they ought to be rocks turning over to really find out what's it like to work for this person so that they can make that informed decision?
Great question. Okay, I'm going to take it a different way. Is that okay?
Right.
Take it
Yeah.
a different way.
Right.
I,
Whatever rabbit hole you want
yeah,
to.
no, no. I always suggest that folks connect with other folks that work with that respective manager, that leader, and really, really ask them some real questions about their management style, their leadership style. What are some things that work? What are some things that didn't work? But asking multiple people within that team to
Yeah.
really have multiple data points to, asking those folks that have actually experienced it and
Yeah.
really digging in and not being afraid to ask those challenging questions of what work did they do that really helped you grow as a member of the team? Or what are some of the potential pitfalls they may tend to fall into?
Yeah.
Being really intentional with the questions, I think having 3 to 5 where you can really get a solid understanding of how that leader or
Yeah.
manager operates.
Yeah.
That's what I love to advise folks to.
Yeah.
People are going to tell you what they want to tell you in so many ways, but if you're asking multiple people, you're going to get a much more holistic view of how
And
that.
read between the lines, right? I remember I was on a team once and my manager was hiring a peer. So there were a
Mhm.
number of us in the same role and there was another of us interviewing. And the boss coordinated a lunch for everyone on the team and the candidate. So we would all be peers. And this was a very troubled team. The boss was not a good leader. Lots of cultural issues going on. Just it was totally unstable. But I wasn't going to just say, hey, like this might not be. And but if she had asked, I would have answered it in a way that was honest and very professional,
Yeah,
but in a way that somebody should be reading between the lines. And she
exactly.
never asked. In that whole lunch, she never asked. And I was always like, oh man, what a missed opportunity. And she ended up taking the job and leaving 9 months later
Yeah,
because like she's like, oh. And I'm like, oh, if you had just asked the question at the lunch, I would have answered it in a way that would have kind of been a
yeah,
think twice before you take this on.
yeah.
So I love that. Ask the question, even if it's just like, what is this boss like to work?
Yeah, agreed. And sometimes you have to learn by not asking those questions and running
Yeah.
into that mistake. And I'm not going to say that hasn't happened to me.
Yeah.
I learned. I think it also has made me that much more diligent of
Yeah.
when I partner with different leaders or different folks as well in my career.
Yeah. Yeah. You talked earlier about following your instinct and following your intuition and your gut. And I'd love to know more about that because I think we all need to be doing more of it. And I will be very honest with you, I had a very difficult time accessing my intuition
Mhm.
until much later in my career. I wish I had access to it. And when I say access to it, I was always so in my head,
Yeah,
in my logical brain, thinking, is this smart? Is this that I wasn't dropping down into my real intuition? Does this feel right? And
yeah.
so it sounds like you were a lot better than I was early on. So tell us, like, how would you advise somebody? How do you get in touch with that intuition? And what are we listening for to know that that's not our head, that that's really our gut?
Yeah, I think I learned by mistake, to be honest with you. There were so many moments where I had this feeling, and I think about it when I bought my first car, when I bought my first house, when I sat across from that leader and he said, I want you to move to New York. And like, there was this feeling that I got that was like, I'm doing this. I know I'm doing this. And I think I quieted that feeling for a long time. And I didn't realize that really was more of my intuition. And it was just quieting all the other noise. It seemed so clear, such a message. And I felt it all over my body. I'm being
Mhm.
so honest is how I felt is, I really got that feeling. But as I progressed in my career and sometimes quieted that feeling, I started to feel like I wasn't really challenging myself. I wasn't really growing. I was doing so many things that were safe and that were, comfortable.
Yeah.
So, like I had said about Shaman, like I love Shaman so much, and I was there for 16 years. But there came a point where I felt, and it was my intuition that was really talking, of like, I need to get comfortable being uncomfortable. This has been really comfortable, and I love it here, and I know that there's a path here for me for growth. And how do I shake this up and also just make sure that I'm leaning into this discomfort? That's also going to help me to grow even more too. So
Mhm.
it took me a lot of work. It taught me a lot of coaching, and I have still my coach, connecting with that and being able to have that space, being able to be challenged, to be able to lean into that a little bit more. That really helped me quiet the noise. And I think intuition, it's loud, and it will tell you what to do in so many different ways, if it's your body or your head
Yeah.
or your feeling. But
Mhm.
there's also this noise that kind of a lot of times happens, and it could be a limiting belief. It could be an assumption you have on something. It could be an interpretation as well, or also just like some experience that's really, really kind of activating a
Mhm.
memory or some kind of trauma. So being able to make sense of that and really just unpack that a bit more. Honestly, Courtney, that is when I really felt like I could hear my intuition.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I heard it by accident, or just for one reason or another. It was that loud and that magnificent that I
Mhm.
felt it in my body. But
Mhm.
really, since I've done a lot more of the work of the reading, the journaling, the long walks, and
Oh,
having
yeah.
moments of where I just would like sit there and cry, or I
Uh,
listen to music, but having that really allowed me to lean so much more into my intuition and
mm.
quiet that noise.
I sort of have that body sensation too with intuition. I know everybody feels it in a little bit of a different way. There's a saying that I love, and this is why I think it is so important to have a coach, but it's when you're inside the jar, you cannot read the label.
Right.
Right? When we're like, we are all in our own jars, every one of us, including the coaches, everybody's in their
Yep.
jar. And we have to use our logical mind to kind of, what does that label say? And to have a third party who is not emotionally invested at all in any decision that you make, really to kind of help distill what feels important in the moment. And because there are very logical reasons why a particular path makes sense, it just doesn't feel right. And
Right.
and
Right.
so and it doesn't, sometimes it doesn't feel right, but not for the right reasons. I feel like it doesn't feel right because it's hard or it's
Yeah.
scary. And
Exactly.
you talked about the hard, scary stuff, and that was exactly where you had to continue to walk into.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting topic to really figure out what's my head, what's fear, and what's really my true intuition.
Yeah. Yeah. And I learned that your mind is so incredibly powerful.
Hmm.
And your mind also wants to protect you. It gets used to, okay, we're going to do this because we know this is a safe thing to do. And it will tell you these stories a lot of times. But I also learned how to talk back to my mind too a little bit, and talk back to sometimes that inner critic that's there. I actually have a name for one of my saboteurs, or my gremlins, if you'd like to call it. His name is Michael, and he activates, he's all the time, and he'll tell
You're
me
not good enough. You're not smart
back.
enough.
Oh
Who do you
yeah.
think you
Have you
are?
met Michael, Courtney? Have you? Because he's
Oh,
like,
I've
that's
got one
exactly,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, he's not very nice.
There you go. See, not very nice. And I know that Michael showed up for me when I really, really needed him, when that younger version of Richard. So I also want to make sure that Michael knows that he had a time and a place, and I think I
Oh,
got it under control from now on. But yeah, I talked to Michael. I actually have a little figurine here that it's a real gremlin too, and I call him Michael too. So
that is an actual. You were dating ourselves again. That is a gremlin
goodness,
from
Courtney,
1988,
you calling
1986.
me? Yeah, I don't mind. I love the gremlins.
I
Sorry,
know.
sorry.
Yeah. But I love that because again, earlier in my career, I would have this gremlin nasty voice in my head, and this is our inner critic. And that's really where that imposter syndrome comes from.
Yes.
They're going to find me out. I must have said one smart thing, and that's why they gave me this promotion. And
Yeah.
now I'm just going to white knuckle it because they're going to realize soon that I don't belong here.
Mhm.
And it's a really powerful, loud thing when
Yeah.
we can't put it in its rightful place. Because Richard, like you said, we're not psychologists here. And yet I think you and I, especially in the space we come from, understand enough about human psychology to understand that that little saboteur had a place, but kept us safe at some point in our lives. And now as grown adults, we get to decide if we want to listen to it and if that person's
Yes.
going to ride shotgun with us, or if we're okay and we're going to take the agency to decide
Yeah.
how we want to be and how we want to show up and what we want to go for.
Yes. And there's something so powerful about that too. And also just a bit moving too of, just evolving and developing. I think like so many folks, I like to consider myself a lifelong learner. I love to learn. I love to develop. I love to grow. I think that's always been something that's been part of who I am. But also just learning more about myself and how I show up and how I can continue to better myself and show up as the best version of Richard. How can I be a better son to my mom, a better uncle to my niece and nephew, a better brother to my sister, and that's just family, but also a better partner to
Mhm.
different clients that I have,
Yeah.
a better mentor, a better coach.
Yeah.
So leaning into that and really understanding that too, I think that that's been really, really helpful and me just evolving
Yeah.
to be the best version of myself as well.
Yeah. Real lifelong learning. I want to go back to the topic of feeling other.
Mm,
So back to you as a gay man in corporate and a gay man of color in corporate.
mhm.
And that feeling of other, because I do have a lot of clients who are in the same otherness.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I think that there are, for some people, is a particular mask that they feel I need to
Yeah.
put this mask on to feel like everybody else since I
Oh,
am the
yes.
other. And that's not always a great long-term strategy. So I'd love to hear your story of feeling other and how you really continue to evolve.
Yeah. I grew up feeling like I was always different. And it started in kindergarten on the playground field. Everybody was playing this game called Red. Just dating myself again. I'm sorry. Red Rover. And I remember, I will never, it's like so clear in my head. None of the kids wanted to play with me. They called me dirty. They said God left me in the sun too long. They said I was ugly. These are things that they go through my head every single day. I'm not going to act like they don't. They go through my head every single day. But one person I remember put out his hand and said, I want to play with you. And I remember saying like, why? I'm different. And he was like, I want to play with you because you're different. He's still my best friend. And I don't think he realized how much that meant to me and how that really changed my life too. But I always felt different. So I learned very, very quickly to cover and to, almost be a chameleon wherever I needed to. It was less like that in school, but I started to kind of think, if I'm perfect with my grades, if I dress a certain way, my hair is a certain way, I'll be much more accepted. And I remember going to my mom in tears and just being like, nobody likes me because I'm different. And my mom was like, well, you're going to have to work twice as hard as everybody else because you are different. And that, and as I look back in hindsight, I'm like, I'm not sure if that was the best advice that my mom could have given me, but I think so many other, parents, they told that to their kids too. So I
Sure.
learned really, really quickly how to cover. I think I got worse and worse as I got older because it just started to translate into the only way that I could survive, to be honest with you. I felt like if I, blended in, made things easy, and this is where I also started to really take my people pleasing to a whole another level too, that I would be able to get somewhere. I would be able to get that promotion. I would be able to keep my job. I'd be able to get different opportunities. And I wasn't honestly until 2020 when George Floyd happened that I started just all of a sudden I took a step back. It was probably months after everything had happened, but I remember sitting by myself and thinking, and I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm a black man. And I think even just that one question, it just started to unravel all these other thoughts of me just not really appreciating myself as a black man, as a Jamaican man, as an Indian man, as a gay man. I had covered myself so much to be whatever I thought everybody else wanted me to be, that I was
Corporate. You were the corporate man, and the
exactly.
humanness behind you, it sounds like, was
Yeah,
secondary to
exactly.
corporate Richard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had several emotional breakdowns just because I didn't know I didn't understand my identity. I didn't understand that I really felt like I hated myself in so many ways. I couldn't look at myself either. So that was something that I think changed me in so many different ways. And it was really tough to work through that. And I'd have it no other way because it really taught me to look at myself and to really start loving myself, to be honest with you. I think so much of the trauma I had from my childhood and just trying to make things work, trying to survive, that I was only surviving. I was not thriving. And I wanted to be thriving. And that was really something that was powerful that I kind of came to. And I was like, I'm just moving, going through the motions. And I'm putting on this facade of like somebody that I think people think I am. And I'm really not that. And I am so tired and exhausted, but like emotionally exhausted too. And I didn't really feel like I had anybody to support me either. Cause I was really probably the most senior, person of color or gay man, like at that level at that time. And I really, really struggled. I struggled. I thought, maybe if I leave and I do something else too, I'll find that. And that absolutely was not the case, to be honest with you. I think it honestly made things worse, but sometimes you have to hit rock bottom a little bit
Yeah.
to be able to kind of like get back up. And I do think that I was emotionally exhausted. I was burnt out. And I think now that I look back in retrospect, I just didn't have anybody to really guide me. And I think that really also plays into why I do the work that I do, is to be a person that has been through it. I've sat in the room where I've been the only one. I've walked into the room and known that I've been the only one, and sweat, takes over my body. And I say that I have to have this conversation with myself of how are you going to show up? And sometimes it's just looking around and seeing that nobody's like you. You can't help but feel lonely.
Yeah.
And it just leads to feeling like you don't belong.
Yeah.
And that activates that Richard that was on that kindergarten field all over again. And even in places where, like I said, where I thought leadership would understand me, we'd have that connection, to not have that and have somebody that's similar to you, that's also kind of like at that level, that was really, really painful. And I realized that this is going to be a journey that I'd have to take on myself, and I'd have to do all the work. And that's okay. That's okay. I'll take on the work, but I also want to be that person for others that are underrepresented or LGBTQ plus that need that support, because I didn't have that. And if I can be that for anybody, I think that that's a reason why I'm on this earth, to be honest with you. Not to
That's
be so prolific, but that's how Richard is,
I listen, I love it. And look, isn't it kind of all of our goal, at least hopefully, certainly mine, is to figure
Yeah.
out what is the highest and best use of me
Yes.
while
Yes.
I'm and able to do.
Yes.
And the fact that you were able to discover that through difficult times. I'm curious, as you were going through that, how did it impact your career? So 2020, the world was crazy for you in particular because you're now having somewhat of an identity.
Yeah.
Is it fair to call it an identity crisis?
Yeah. 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 I think it is. I never thought about it like that, but yeah, absolutely. That's 100% what I felt it was.
Really trying to like see yourself and your position in the broader world and how you view yourself, how you think other people are perceiving you, whether they are or not. We
Yeah.
have assumptions that we draw. But I'm just curious how your evolution through that difficult period, how that impacted your career, choices that you made, and how you were showing up still every day. Because, of course, our audience here are corporate high achievers, and
Mhm.
a lot of them are listening to your story feeling like, me too, me too.
Yeah.
And maybe they're in the middle of it. And so, what advice, if you could pick up the phone and call Richard, what would you say?
I would say your feelings are valid, and it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be confused. It is okay to be angry. As I was in that stage or that place, I was so emotionally all over the place. I think back to how I was at Shawmut, and I was so lucky, and I'm so grateful for the managers I had and the mentors that were there, because there were times where I think I'd have like emotional like breakdowns, and they gave me the space to do that. So while I didn't have anybody above me to like really look up to and say, okay, this is what's going on, I had phenomenal managers and phenomenal leaders that allowed me to just like pour out, and I'm talking like I would literally scream and be like, I don't care about this. I don't care about that. And I had no idea what was going on either. So if I look back, I tried to like hold it back, but I think letting it out was so much more powerful, and I needed to get it out. And I was just exhausted too. So don't be afraid to take the time to slow down. And that's something that I learned from from my coach too. I know I move really fast. I do everything fast. I'm very controlling with certain things that happen. This was a time where I couldn't have control over everything. I needed everything to get out. I needed to sit with those feelings. I needed to understand myself a bit more if I was expecting other people to understand me at the same time. So honestly, I would say my feelings were valid. My emotions were coming from a place, but really what it was, I think it was really a sign of like, Richard, you need to stop and slow down. There's so much going on in here that you keep on trying to push through. And I'm 5'5". I may be short, I may be small, but I am incredibly mighty. And any of
Ooh,
my friends and family will tell you that I am very mighty, but I kept on just trying to power through it. And the more I pushed I think the more that it hurt and I had pain. So really being able to just take that time, have that space to
yeah.
really just kind of like sit with things and work through and listen to myself and get myself a little bit more around my self-awareness and my self-regulation. That has been the most important thing to me. And honestly, I really started after I left Shaman. Once
Mhm.
it dissolved, I think that left me with this, I felt like the floor beneath me had just been pulled out of me because now I didn't have a job. So it's like we talk about this identity. And I also didn't realize how much my HR career, my job to answer your question too, how much that was part of my identity too. So really being able to just also separate that was hard because
Yeah.
like there's one thing you could say, and I know I do this so often. All right, my personal life, this is going on X, Y, and Z, but you know what? I am rocking it when it comes to
Yeah.
school. I'm rocking it in this corporate setting or what have you with my role in X, Y, and Z. To have none of that
Who am I? Who am I without this big fancy job and this title?
exactly.
Yeah.
Had nowhere else to hide. I had to really sit and do the work, and I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity and I had that time to do that because that time that was just so necessary.
Well, Richard, I'm going to have your contact information linked in the show notes. So anybody listening who is interested in reaching out to Richard, the contact information is there. I'm going to pivot us for a moment because I want to be respectful of your time. You climbed the ladder. You were quite senior in the corporate space. And of course, we're inside the promotion room here. And my goal with the podcast is always every single episode, I want people to leave with a nugget of something new, something that they can go and implement at work tomorrow. So I would love to know from your perspective, two questions. The first one is, what do you think people would be surprised to know about what we're really talking about behind closed doors when we're talking about promotions, succession, overall talent?
I would love folks to know that oftentimes we're talking about your development, performance, how that aligns with the business. And I think a lot of times there's these, oh, what are they talking about? They're talking about like layoffs or riffs or not giving this or they're being unfair, especially HR. They are advocating for folks to develop and how that development also aligns with the business. So that growth being able to kind of like really align and happen at the same time. That's something that we talk about all the time, and it is really, really, I think, really where the magic happens in an organization.
So good. I love that because performance is table stakes, right? You've got to be a
Yeah,
real performer. But I love how you're tying that into business performance
yeah,
because there is a gap where in my corporate years, there would be phenomenal performers who weren't really understanding the business financials. They weren't on the investor calls.
mhm,
They weren't in the biz. We have a term fit for future. When we're
yeah,
talking about talent, are they fit for future? Well, what does that mean? It
mhm,
means in 5 years, here's where this company's going. Do these people have the skills and capabilities that we're going to need them to have in 5 years? There is a way to clue into it. Talk to your controller, talk to your CFO, talk to your boss's boss, listen to what the CEO is saying when you hear them talking, and start to show your boss that you are connecting dots, that you
ex-
understand
exactly.
where your role fits into the overall business strategy.
Absolutely. So this is what, like pretty junior, early in my career at Shaman
Yeah.
in particular, but I'd always get that feedback of you need to be more strategic. And I'd be like, what does that mean? How can I? I feel like I'm doing everything that there is, but really understanding the strategy. And I think that HR business partner role, for any folks that are in that role in particular too, I think it allows for you to really have that connection with the business and understand how HR really aligns with the business and how the two really foster and support one another.
Most of this audience is not in HR.
No.
So But I love this point. And by the way, the business partner role was one of my favorite roles throughout my entire career. So it just shout out to the HRBPs out there. But for the audience who's not in HR, get to know your HR business partner.
Yeah.
Get on their calendar. We love to get to know talent. And by the way, we're in the room. So if we know your name, we
Yes.
can be a sponsor and an advocate for you. But ask your business partner, where's
Yeah.
the business going? What are the skills and capabilities I ought to be paying attention to? Those are really smart questions to ask because they're going to be like, all right, Johnny's on the radar, right? So that's a easy thing to do. So the second question is, if you could tell a high achiever who really is keen to climb that ladder to do one thing on Monday morning when they get to work, to stand out from the crowd, what would that be?
Oh, I love this question. I'm going to take it a very different place. Say hi to folks. Smile, hold the door, be a human. We're in a time right now where there is such a lack of connection. It is so powerful to even just smile at somebody, to greet them. There's so many different things that folks are dealing with right now, I think always for the most part, but having somebody be a person that will smile, that will greet you, that will say good morning, that will say please and thank you, what have you. I'm not just talking about manners, but will actually engage with you and be a real human. That is so powerful. And starting to build that skill of authenticity and being genuine and being human and treating people like individuals, that is a skill that will take you so far in life. To be honest with you, I feel that way. I personally feel like that is so critical. And if you're a leader, that's not even just a nice to have. I feel like that is a prerequisite to be a leader.
Yeah, love that. Richard, I end every podcast with asking my guest for a book recommendation because I love to read. If you have a particular business or self-help book, I would love to know your recommendation.
My favorite, I have a couple. I am a huge Brene Brown fan. The Gifts of Imperfection was one of the books that I read that helped me start to build a vocabulary and language around how I was feeling. And also just that I didn't have to be perfect, to lean into those different moments and those different feelings. That's my number one. I also would say Mel Robbins' Let Them.
Yeah.
That was huge for me. And just overall in life of just letting people do that. I wanted to have so much control over so much stuff, and being able to read that book and really just say, you know what, let that person do that and let me too. Let's not forget about the second part of that too. Everyone always says let them, but like the second part is so much more powerful to me, I think, a lot of times too.
I love it.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for
Pleasure
all of
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me inside the promotion room, and be sure to follow the show so you never miss an episode. Cheers to your success.